What's up, everybody? Welcome to today's episode of Beyond Influence. We have Colin Rocker with us here today, and we're just hanging out. How you doing today, Colin?
Doing good, man. Happy to be here.
Welcome to the podcast. Super excited. A little different flavor of creator than we've had on before. I'm excited to dive into all things business advice, life advice. I've been following your feed for a bit and really enjoy your content. It's a really important day too. Instagram just allowed you to post music on your profile. So we're basically back to MySpace.
Amazing. Okay.
So I don't know if you're all ready for this. I feel the topic coming. It's a new day for Instagram. But
okay. I think I feel a first question brimming. I mean, what are we rocking at the top of our profiles then?
It's all you. Let's see what if you have 2 songs. What's on top of your profile?
Oh man. Okay. The first one that comes to mind, and this is gonna age me geographically as well as my actual age, but when I got married, I came out to Bring Him Out by T.I., and I'm like big Atlanta rap fan. And so you gotta bring that energy, I feel, on your profile, right? Like this is literally all my videos, all my content, right? Like literally let's bring him out. So that's like it's probably the first song that comes to mind for me. Bring Him Out by T.I.
Nice. Kwame, what would yours be?
Oh man, this is a really tough one. So I don't know if it's something that's reflective of me now, but my all-time favorite song ever is Kiss from a Rose by Seal.
Wow. Okay. Very different vibe. Okay.
I know we weren't expecting that, but
not at all.
You know what? Yeah, maybe nowadays it'll be like Migos or something.
Sure. I just want to land on your profile and be like, baby.
Right.
Scott, what's yours then?
I have no idea. I'm too all over the place. I'd probably pick something cliche, but those are solid picks. That's pretty great.
Yeah, look at Scott. He's avoiding it. He's like, I
am. I can't.
We'll circle back. We'll circle back.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey, Colin, man. So what you've been up to lately? How's life? How's influencing? You've obviously been watching a lot of your recent content, and we'll touch on a few things. Maybe some things I agree with. Maybe some things we can have some dialogue about. But how's things going?
Things are good, man. I mean, I think off the bat, I'd love to just give obviously people some context in terms of who I am, right? Just to set the context there a little bit. So obviously, as you said, I'm Colin Rocker. I'm a content creator. I focus on career and corporate content with a real mission to expose, educate, and inspire people, sort of the next generation of young professionals on their journey. Especially people who identify as first generation professionals like myself, who don't come from a long line of bankers or accountants or consultants or marketers, right? Like me, my dad was a plumber, and so when I asked him for advice on how to get my job or my career really going, we couldn't really navigate my path the same way others may have access to. So that's sort of why I exist on social media. But some pretty big recent update in my life is I'm now a new dad, so that's pretty awesome. I've got
congrats.
Thank you so much. I've got a 3-month-old here named Isaiah, and he's a handful. He definitely takes up a lot of my time, a lot of my attention, especially in this new phase where I'm working from home and I'm trying to manage building the content, building the business, being a dad, being a husband, being a friend, right? So that's honestly that's the one big update. It's been all encompassing, but it's been a lot of fun.
That's amazing. I was scrolling your feed again, and I came across your kind of photo drop, and I was like, man, I feel like I'm deep in his world right now. I got like meeting the mayor of New York City at a mansion, and then like all the kid stuff, like summer activities. It's awesome. It highlights, how multidimensional your life is, and the both kind of personal and professional success you're having. So super stoked for you.
Thank you, man. I think, it's been interesting. I'll say my journey on social media, I was definitely like all niche, all topic for the first couple of years, like every single video, tip. But I found this whole other sort of side of my audience and side of myself getting more comfortable, being more vulnerable, like the other parts of my life. And kind of going like to the, this podcast, like beyond just the influencing and the splashy big pics, like, let me show you me, on the beach with, a little bit of crust in my eye and like some sand on my skin and just like, let me show you that other side of me. And people have been really receptive to it. So it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think that's really cool, man. I think a a few things that we've learned along this podcasting journey. We had this exact conversation with Kay Brown, a different influencer who's in a very different space, but people show up and they end up finding you for the content, right? But they stay for the person.
Absolutely.
The deeper you can get into yourself, and it's really, really, it's funny, but sometimes it gets creepy at times because people end up knowing way too much about you.
That's right. I mean, you're one to talk, Kwame. I mean, come on, let's talk about personal lives on the internet. Yeah.
I know. It's crazy, but yeah, people love people. They want to follow your story. They want to see that journey. They want to hear you talk about the first job you got. And then in 10 years, they want to see you say, hey, I'm a CEO now. They love that transition of a journey, man. And you've obviously had a big one. I'd love to know, what was your first step into content creation? Like, at what point did you realize, hey, this is something I think I could be good at?
It's a good question. Yeah, I think throughout my life, if I look back, right, they always say like, it's easier to connect the pieces looking backwards. But I would say like early on, like in school, I was always the one chosen to like present the group project, right? When I was a kid, my mom tells me I used to put on like magic shows that I would like make tickets out of construction paper and I'd like put on a show after dinner. And like, I've always enjoyed or been comfortable being in front of a stage or communicating a vision. But, obviously getting my first job in, management consulting at Deloitte, like that's not exactly, the best career path for that specific kind of skill. But so I was doing that, when I graduated college, COVID happened. I'm back in Georgia with my my in-laws at the time, and really just felt like I needed a creative outlet. Like I just felt bored. I think like a lot of people, I felt kind of like trapped and, limited in my space and what I was doing. And so I really started making a lot of content. I was making like workout stuff, motivational stuff, commenting on topics in the news, on like business and stuff. And no one cared about any of that. And so, I think randomly one day I just started breaking out just like what my life was like and what my job was like. And people really gravitated towards that content, especially young people who at that point, if you can imagine being in high school or early college and you're starting to think about your career and you have no idea what these jobs are like, what is an investment banker? What is a UX designer, right? Like these terms are nebulous. And certainly, for people like me and that had the background I had. And so I think I started to cultivate that following and I was like, okay, like let's talk about it, right? How do you get these jobs? What is a day in the life actually like? What do I like about my work? What do I don't like about my work? And so that kind of naturally grew through like the beginning of 2021 to where I was now. And then as I was talking about earlier, I mean, I've now brought in this whole aspect of like my actual lifestyle. Like, what does it mean to live in New York City, have a young baby in New York City? And how do you balance that with like the work I'm doing? And so it's, it's been a really natural path. I wouldn't say like when I was 18, that I thought I'd be an influencer one day or a content creator, but it's been such like a natural and cool and like exciting, sort of a path that I've been on.
It's awesome. It's funny, going through your content too. I think a lot of people have different views on work and kind of more traditionalist or, new remote. And, some of your posts hit me specifically. There's one about drafting a cover letter and how important that is. And, you show up to interview in shorts. And
yes.
It's funny because I came up in the world of like very formal, we're wearing suits, you're wearing tie. And the thought of like wearing a hat to work or wearing shorts, it was laughable. I mean, it's wild. And I think context matters so much, but I think there's something to be said for the spirit of some of the things that you talk about, which is showing that you care, showing that it matters to you. And sure. I think a cover letter, whether read or not, it's almost the gesture in and of itself. It's the thought process. Like I talk about handwritten notes. There are candidates who will drop like an actual handwritten note to me. And I'm like, regardless of what it says, there's a level of care, a level of want, a level of effort that they're putting in that demonstrates this other intangible of how they're going to show up and do the job. So I really liked your perspective, and it's interesting. Maybe like I feel like you get some pushback though. Like how do you like
totally?
Maybe that's one of your top hate topics or whatever. But I'm like, how do you manage that more traditional view with kind of a lot of the younger generation who doesn't care about those things or doesn't put a value on them?
I love this question, first of all, because I feel like in a lot of ways, I feel like this bridge between this pre and post pandemic kind of work environment where a lot of people weren't exposed to a world before remote work and before, Zoom meetings and before like all these other things. And yeah, I do get a lot of pushback, especially from a lot of young people who say, it's about, being authentic, showing up as your full self. And like, I get that, and I'm empathetic to it. But at the end of the day, I mean, this is, those same people will say something else that I actually agree with, is like, when you show up to work, you're not, it's not a family, but it is a team, right? And so like there is that sense of camaraderie. I played sports growing up, and so I understand bringing people together, with different skill sets to accomplish a higher goal. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's also about what you want out of your career, which I always try to give a heavy dose of, like, this is for, people who maybe came from a certain place and want to get to another place in their life and in their career. And my whole thing now is about empowering people to create the careers that can uplift themselves in their lives. And so depending on what you want out of life, what you want out of your career, you can take different paths. But I sort of lay out, how I see it, and, get a fair amount of hate on either sides of the age demographic, but mostly on the younger for sure.
Yeah. So I would say to anybody that's listening to this, a big part of landing your dream job, or just even a job on your way to your dream job, and also keeping it and also getting promoted, a big part of it is showing that you give a crap. I don't feel like a lot of people show that they give a crap, especially in jobs that can feel a little bit tougher to start off with. My first job that I ever had was actually, the first one was at a Hollister, which
nice,
good old days.
I can see it. That's
all right.
Awesome.
And then I had a job at a gas station passing out flyers. Then I progressed to a few others, but one of my favorite ones was being a waiter. I loved being a waiter because obviously there's a component that, a lot of people out there have control over what you make, but a big part of it is how you make them feel and what they walk away with in terms of their experience. I remember the worst experience I ever had. I think at that point in time, I was very new. I was very green. And I was like taking out the wrong orders. I didn't know like what drinks they ordered. Like I was all over the place. And then I spilled a drink on the table. And the dad looks at me, man, and he's like, buddy, you're batting 1,000. I will never forget that moment. But before everything wrapped up, like I came out and I apologized. I was like, I'm so sorry. I'm new and like I'm nervous and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they gave me a considerable tip.
That's amazing.
And it was just because I showed that I cared about my job. And even if in that moment I didn't represent as my best self, I wanted to let them know that I cared about their experience and all that good stuff. So when it comes back to the whole like wearing shorts to your interview, like
that's amazing.
Like, come on. It's
I know.
So like it's the bare minimum.
It's crazy.
You can't go out there and show that you care about something. You're going to do well on your job. You're going to focus on it and put your effort in it. If you can't put the effort into showing up for your interview. Yeah.
I mean, I think pursuing excellence is the ultimate transferable skill, because I, like you, like my first job was at Chick-fil-A. I did door-to-door sales when I was in college. I mean, I've had those sorts of jobs, but it's like in every professional thing I've ever done, it's like you can show up every day and just choose to be a little bit better and try to pursue whatever the model for excellence is and like whatever you happen to be doing. But yeah, I think there's also, oh man, this conversation is about to take a turn, but I'm going to do it. I think if you look at the state of the internet, especially social media, we're going into this like algorithmic internet where whatever your current belief system is as it comes to like your work or your life, that is being reinforced, right? And so I think it's great for people like me, right, who are on the internet, and I can find people who are interested in my stuff. But I think on the other end, if you believe other things, right, in terms of your attitude for work or what you show up to in an interview, I mean, who knows what this person was consuming before, they got this opportunity to show up, right? And so I think it's also this thing of like getting in our own digital echo chambers, right? And like you never expose yourselves to other perspectives. And so when you see them in the real world, it's like, oh my God, like how could you wear pants to it? Like, how could someone tell you to be formal? It's like, it seems strange, right? Because your whole world has been reinforced by what was already there the second you connected to the internet. So it's really interesting.
We always have this debate where it's like, we want to like see what each other's algorithms are. And so like, if you want a fun game, and this is super nerdy, but anytime you go to an Airbnb that has a TV, go and pull up the Netflix account of whoever logged in last. Most times they won't log out, and just see what's getting served up. It's wild. I'm like, I went to this place in Arizona and it was like all Bollywood, like Indian content. And I was like, this is cool. We started watching stuff on their and it was super cool because it's like a whole world that I don't even know exists in social, on Netflix, whatever it is. And I feel like just it almost transplants you into the ecosystem and the life and the thoughts and beliefs of these other people. And it's super fun. Like, I don't know how advisable handing each other's phones and Instagram is, but
Right.
if you're friends, but I do think it's super interesting. And I think it is, on a serious note, it is one of the reasons why I've gotten into trouble is when you live in that kind of echo chamber, it gives you, it emboldens you in some of the maybe more out there thoughts or the destructive thoughts or, areas where people can be belittled or bullied or treated poorly. And I think that is where I think the social media companies have a responsibility to ensure that while they're serving you entertaining content that resonates with you, they're also not creating destructive behaviors and or polarizing and creating opposition amongst people and division, which, I mean, it's clear there is a lot of division at the moment.
Yeah,
so we don't have to go too deep into that.
100%. No, I agree with you 100%. But I also think of the best thing that ever happened to social media was the viral video of someone doing something ridiculous and crazy. And I think that I've even been a part of some of these creator boot camps, or I've talked to coaches or heard people at events talk about it, and it's a legitimate part of the strategy, right? It's what can you say that's going to push someone to either side of something, right? And so it's definitely prevalent because it gets views, it gets clicks, it gets engagement, but definitely can lead to some pretty dark and destructive places.
Yeah, I'm glad you took that turn because I'm going to make a very bold statement. I do think in my opinion, what's most wrong with the internet right now is how overtly polarizing it is, right? It absolutely just diminishes and it takes away our ability to have diversity of thought. And that's not fair to us as a society, because if I believe something and you keep feeding that to me, it's just going to further that belief so far that I might be too far gone for someone else to be able to tell me something that they believe in that I maybe should consider, right? We just get so far siloed into our own thought processes and our own beliefs. And that is constantly being reinforced by everything that we see around us. And so, for goodness sakes, social media, I know that it makes for a really, really good, easy way to sell something to someone. But if there's anything we could do for the powers that be above there, help us a little bit with the diversity of thought. We need to be able to relate to each other more, right?
Totally. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So to make this about myself again, I do think that also I believe I'm a slightly different voice as well when it comes to the content you see on social media when you're talking about your career or specifically corporate America, because a lot of that content is overwhelmingly cynical and negative, right? Everyone wants a remote job that pays them $500,000 a year where they can work 3 hours a day, right? And so I think that just showing up and saying wear pants to your interview, write a cover letter, and show up willing to do the work is I get daggers, right? But I like that kind of abrasiveness because I think it attacks people that says, okay, well, let's see where these things play out, right? And you can clearly see if you model success, right, in almost any industry, right, the people who are getting to a certain place in terms of the life they're able to create for themselves and their families, the growth of their businesses if they happen to be entrepreneurs. Those habits lead somewhere, right? And so I've always wanted to be a positive voice, even though I can be honest and real, right? Because everything what a lot of people assign to corporate America, they should actually assign to character, right? I mean, that is, if you have a bad boss, people don't leave jobs, people leave people, right? And so I think there are disingenuous plumbers and they're disingenuous software engineers, right? And so I think you can be positive and have a good outlook in terms of what a thriving sort of corporate or any kind of career can be without sort of diving too deep into things that are going to make people just reinforce the thing that nothing matters, why do anything, I'm going to wear my shorts, all that kind of stuff.
I love that. I think obviously I'm biased as a leader of an organization, but I've seen the power that work and meaningful work and growth, how that can change lives, how that can create meaning for individuals. And I really dislike that the narrative, it's like, oh, I hate my job, I hate my boss, and it's just this really negative reinforcement of work. And I think you can do some of the most meaningful growth and work in the context of your profession. And but I do think, to Kwami's earlier point, it's how you show up. It's showing that you care. It's showing that you're not just there to punch the clock and then leave. You're invested. It's funny. I talked to my wife about this quite a bit because I'm a little old school in my beliefs too. Like, if there's a box that shows up with like a desk to be put together, I'm like, I'll put it together. Who cares? Like, why not? And it's like, everyone's like, why would you do that? And I'm like, I don't know. I just have pride of ownership. I don't want that box sitting there. We need that done. Like, who better to go do it? And then I see like, some of the more junior employees, and they're just like, why is that box there? Like, I wish someone would take care of that. And like, hey, where's my swag? Like, it's this pride of ownership thing. And I get it. Like, we're incentivized in a different way. They might not feel like they're, they have ownership of the company. But I feel like even as a junior employee, if you act like, prideful, you act like you're an owner of the organization and you're a steward of it and your own success, it's going to turn out better. And I think part of that is, though, aligning yourself with a business. And I think that is a key aspect. You have to find a group of individuals, a business leadership, who will advocate for you, who will advocate for your growth and support you. Totally. If they have the same view of you that you might have of them, which is like, oh, they just work for me, they're so annoying, I hope they just come in and do their job and leave and don't complain to me. Yeah. But if you say, hey, these are real people who want to grow and want investment in their future, want some job security and want a meaningful contribution, they'll give you a lot more. So I think there's a lot to be learned there.
Yeah, I think the worst piece of advice anyone can take when it comes to their career or, their business is like, your work will speak for you. Like, that's something where, being raised in a blue collar household, like, I heard that all the time and I saw it modeled all the time, in my community. But I mean, when you go into these corporate spaces, I mean, the people that are moving and shaking, I mean, yes, they have a level of competency of what they've chosen to do with their careers, but it's like they're networking with people, they're building relationships, they're self-promoting, right? And so I think that's another thing where in a virtual environment, it's hard to see those sorts of things and it's hard to build those sorts of skills. But I learned very quickly in 2018, 19, and the early parts of 2020, when I was working my first corporate job, like how to navigate that zone and how to do good work, but also make sure that my managers and the people who were above me that had a say in how much I made at the end of the year knew the work that I was doing. And I was also aligning myself to things that were leveraged opportunities, right? Like, where are you putting yourself in the company that's moving to grow, right? Is the team you're on going, this way, or are they stagnant, or are they going that way, right? And you need to make sure you're on the right side of that equation. So a lot of these like operational, like, I guess, organizational, like, movement pieces, I think get lost because everyone's focused on, I'm responsible for this report, or I'm responsible for this dashboard, or I'm responsible for this campaign. And you lose sight of like, there has to be a long-term strategy for how you want to, navigate your career. So yeah, I totally agree. And that's something that I preach over and over again. I've got a series called Subtle Social Skills, or Subtle Social Secrets, where I sort of break out some of this stuff because you'll miss it in a second. No one's going to teach it to you. And especially if you're in a virtual or remote working environment, you can't even observe it, right? And so that's something where I've tried to be, a voice or an example or a model that people can use. Is like, this is how, that's a tool. I can take that, I can use that, I can share that. It can, help me get to a better place.
100%. You must have been mad at yourself the day you made that title, though. I would totally trip over that every time I tried to say it.
Yeah.
Like, subtle, yeah.
100%.
Oh man, Colin, you're speaking a lot of facts, and there's one thing that I think resonates throughout most of your posts that speaks to my heart is, the percentage of Black Americans that make six figures. I think in 2024, it's tough to live comfortably if you're not, within a certain area within your salary, without being way too direct about it. But ultimately, we want to be able to find ways to help our communities elevate, right? We want to elevate the people around us. And I think when you think about our journeys, I was very fortunate to ever get to a place where I was making money that, I was shocked about. I think growing up, I was in a household, was born in Ghana, came here. My parents were both very hard workers, like you said, blue collar in that sense. My dad finally got a job as a loan officer at Wells Fargo. And that was
Nice.
our first break into like, wow, there's possibilities here.
Yeah.
And then, went to college, got my master's degree, thought about what I would do next. And, long story short, it got me to an organization where I started to work day to day as a sales development rep.
Mm-hmm.
Throughout that journey, worked really hard, became a sales development manager. And then through that journey, went on and on and on. But one of the biggest things that I learned as I was going through all of that, it was despite the degree that I had or the learnings or the accomplishments or the achievements, it was that if I was consistently curious and learning more about not just what I do, but the people I do it with,
Mm-hmm.
right, I would be able to grow in my career. I think my biggest break came from getting an opportunity to work like an extra day, in the office. So they were like, "Hey, who wants to stay Wednesday nights?" So I started working Wednesday. I was like, "Hey, I'll stay for another couple extra hours. Book some demos, make some extra money." And then through that, the person that I ended up working with was somebody who was looking to advance their career as well. So we started to connect, we started to learn together, and we started to propel each other as well. And so it is really important, I think, for any career direction to really help propel each other. So with that being said, I want to ask you a little bit about how to up level as a creator. I think that you've had a really great journey, and you are now, you are definitely a noticeable voice in the community. And so as we think about professionals in the transition, or maybe just the supplement, maybe if you don't want to become a content creator forever, or solely you want to add to what you're doing, what are the biggest things that you are seeing that help you to improve or increase your ability as a content creator? If it's not just like in making money and it's in making better content, what do you see there?
That's a great question, Kwame, but I honestly can't answer without, addressing what you had talked about earlier, because the first time I saw that stat, it was like a gut punch, right? Because same as you, like I've been blessed in my career to hit that milestone, and it's a good feeling, but to know that there are so many people in our community that weren't yet there, it really kind of calcified my mission and why I exist, especially on social media. Because I remember, I would go to work every summer. I didn't go to camp. I went to work with my dad. And, so I'd be in his, pickup truck, and we'd go. He was commercial and residential plumbing. And so we'd go to these big office buildings in Atlanta, and we'd be in the basement, tightening a wrench or, knee deep and what. But like, you'd wonder, like, what do people do in this building full of glass with white shirts on and ties, right? And it's like, are they all in finance? I don't think so. What even is finance, right? Like, my dad didn't even invest in the stock market. Like, it wasn't like I didn't have any frame of reference for like what was going on. And so I think even outside of content, I think just the awareness of all of the different ways, we don't all have to be bankers, we don't all have to be consultants, but all of the different ways to hit that milestone and get a semblance of financial security. Sales is a great path. The trades, right, are a great path. And so there are ways to do it, but that's certainly become a big part of what I feel I'm doing out there, is sort of giving people at least eyes into ways to hit that milestone. But I'll say specific to content creation, it's kind of related, because I think that for me, I felt like online I was giving career advice for the first 2 years, but in the last year, I've sort of really like clarified my actual mission and who my actual audience was and who I'm actually serving in this phrase of like a first gen professional. So how do I take someone who has no idea what a corporate career path looks like, maybe hasn't even, had the opportunity to pursue a 4-year degree, and how do we get them to that, to get into that 6%, right? And so that's like, I think that's a big one, like the awareness piece. Of how do you move beyond a niche in a topic and actually get to like I think your moat is who you are as a person, right? And nobody can Kwame or Scott better than Kwame or Scott, right? And so I felt like the more of me I injected into the content without just doing, a get ready with me, no one cares really about my skincare routine or how hard I work out, but it's like, how do I inject who I am into the value I'm giving my audience is a big thing. And another huge thing is having a team. I mean, to date right now, I've got I've got a literary agent, I've got a talent manager, I've got a financial advisor, and I have an accountant. And those are all people I've added onto my team in the last like year. And they have all, more than are, bringing in or providing value far and above, whatever cost that may be for me. But I held out for a while, probably longer than I should have, honestly. But you have to model success. And so I was looking at the biggest creators and who I want to be and who I'm looking to. And it's like they bring on people who are experts in what they do that enable them to go further than they could have gone alone, right? And so I think like building a really good team, a sort of trusted and well-compensated advisors, and then really figuring out what your like competitive advantage and your moat is, which for me is a combination of how am I providing value and then like who am I as a person and like sort of finding where those two meet.
I love that. And that, we've heard from others the same kind of unlock around building out a team and surrounding yourself with people who can help, uplift the kind of total output of the system. And it's funny, I think both on the creator side and, work, it largely applies. And it's really funny. Like I feel like it's super awkward. Anytime someone gives a compliment, it's like, oh man, look at all the stuff. I'm like, well, I just hired a bunch of smart people and I like made sure they're aimed in the same direction. Right. Like, I have my own skills, but like, I'm not going to go engineer a product. I'm going to hire an amazing CTO who can go and build it better than anyone else. I'm going to hire an amazing sales leader who can go out and navigate. And that's not to say like we don't have value, but I think it really does come down to building an amazing team who has specialization, who has unique skills to get stuff done. We talked to Marcel, basically I do work, streamer. His team was like, he's like, I have 8 thumbnail artists. I have like 3 editors. I have all this. There's no way I could accomplish it by myself with the amount of content we need to push out. And he's like, they're better. I don't like it. I'm not as good at it. And, it just works out better. So I love that. And there's no shame in that too. I think, recognizing that others are better at things or like to do things, that's great. That's part of why, working as a team makes a lot of sense. So I'm curious now, you've been an established content creator, you've got this team, you mentioned having a talent agent and we know you're doing some work with brands. What was the first kind of foray into working with brands? How'd that go? I'm curious what that first step on your journey was there.
Yeah, no, my first, I feel very fortunate that my first ever brand partnership was with Notion and they reached out to me. And so I was like, oh, let's go. All right. It's like making money. Like, I felt really good about it. And then they said, our budget was $300. And so I was like, okay, well, not rich yet, but let's do it, And so that started a really long, arduous, like hard knocks process of realizing what my value was as a creator and what I could charge for. I mean, again, another Wild West. I mean, you want to talk about the corporate path, like the creator path is like, it's crazy, right? As I'm sure you guys have seen given like your business, but like that was, I was in a lot of Slacks and Discords and group texts with like other people just trying to figure out like, how are you navigating this? What are you charging for? Like, what can I charge for? Like what, what's good, what's bad? And so it was a very gruesome and ugly process. And I feel like I haven't heard a story yet that wasn't that from the people I know that create and do brand partnerships. But that was the first real major unlock, was bringing on a talent agent that had experience with creators, but also brought in a lot of like traditional experience. And so my specific talent agent, he's worked with like stand-up comedians, he's worked with traditional celebrities. And so like he had a really big understanding of what was going on in the market, which is exciting, especially now as I'm moving into doing stuff that's, I'm not quite ready to talk about too much yet, but that's really exciting, in larger and more like traditional media. So yeah, it's definitely helped.
Okay. Well, let's get to a hard-hitting question real quick. Can you speak on this? What's the most money you've made from a deal? And you can either share the company or you cannot. Tell us a little bit of that.
Yeah. No, I'll keep it real with you. I mean, I won't give any company names, but I will say, influencing is weird because I feel like this is the first year I've ever had a 5-figure deal, but it's also the year I've had the most 5-figure deals. And so I would say the biggest one, single number one, was probably, I think it ended up around like just under 40,000 for for a couple of videos. And so that's been like really, really good. But now I will say with my audience, what I'm really excited about is, now I've got a newsletter. I'm on Instagram, I'm on TikTok. And so like, I've been finding creative ways to sort of package up content and sort of sell it as a whole thing instead of just like, these one-off little like piecemeal deals. But yeah, biggest contract signed with one brand, probably just under 40K.
That's amazing. We're so happy for you on that. It's funny. I'm like, there's going to be this huge influx of creators in the first generation business space. So you're like, we'll take that deal.
Exactly. Which it brings up an interesting point because obviously like, people ask me now, like you're talking about career success, but it's like, you're not, I don't have a traditional job anymore. And so it's been interesting because in some ways I rationalize it where it's like, now I have so much more time and capacity to like help people. But also now people are coming to me that are accountants or marketers or software engineers, and they want to build their own personal brand. So how do they get started with content, whether that's a newsletter, whether that's on LinkedIn? And so it's interesting how like the one constant is like building an audience online. And once you do that, there's so many really interesting opportunities that really open up to you. So it's been nice.
I can dig that. I think, to speak to myself, I completely agree with the influencing is very strange. My first year as a content creator, I think in total I made like 46K.
Yeah.
Right. Not impressive numbers. Yeah. And what I can say is when I really invested myself and started putting myself out there and sometimes occasionally following a trend and doing something funnier or more lighthearted or going with the flow a bit more, it definitely changed and people started seeing it. I always used to think like, who am I creating this content for?
Yes.
Yeah. And then one day it all started to make sense. I made 3 viral videos just because I looked at what trends were going on. Amazing. And I thought about a funny way that I could put my own spin on it. And that changed everything about my marketability as a creator. Because I think as a creator, people saw me as this reality TV personality. They're like, okay, maybe if we have things in alignment with like love and relationships and, soppy feelings, we can do that. Yeah, right. But when I started branching off and like doing funny things and being lighthearted and going with the humor and going with the flow, I can say July and August are my most successful months as a creator by far. And I've just in those months doubled what I made in my whole last year as a creator. Yeah. And so it's really important to just lean into it. You have to go out there. You have to like show yourself. You have to like jump on the occasional trend. Like don't keep yourself this very one-dimensional person. Yeah. Be multifaceted as a creator. You can share out the things within your niche while also appealing to the world.
100%. And another part of that is you have to also like pitch and do outbound and put yourself in front of people because if you're not speaking to your ability to play in those other zones outside of a traditional reality Netflix TV star like sort of silo, that's all people will see you as, right? And so you were, I think, fortunate to have those viral videos as sort of like a proof point. But for me, it's like I don't want to just be an influencer. Like I'll do speaking, I'll host an event, I'll come in and do a workshop with like your intern class. Like I'm down for all of that. And so like I need to be talking about that in my newsletter and on LinkedIn and like, hinting at it in my content in a way so I don't get bucketed into the person where, oh, he only wants to, flip a TikTok and, that'll be all. So, yeah.
It's going to be great. Colin's going to come back in September with a shirtless Pilates pic and a romance novel post on Instagram.
Oh, yeah. You give me some ideas,
like, hey, it worked for Kwame.
100%.
Oh, man. So we are coming up towards the segment, man. I love this segment. It's just a quick run through of your experience as a creator and what you prefer. So I'm going to give you 2 options, right? And you're just going to tell me what you prefer out of those 2 and just a quick sentence or 2 about why.
Very nice. Yeah. Ready for it. Let's do it.
All right. We'll call it this or that segment. So TikTok or Instagram?
Instagram. I feel like TikTok is really good for going viral, but I feel like I've been able to curate a much tighter knit community on Instagram.
I like that. Okay. Video or static photo?
Oh, video all the way. Yeah. I think, I don't know. I love the sound of my own voice and people, it doesn't bother too many people. Right. And I think that, it just adds, I think it's harder too, honestly. So I think I'm building a bigger moat around myself. But that's also probably a cope for the fact that I'm probably not as good of a writer as I should be. So yeah, pros and cons.
I can dig it. You do have a good voice.
Use what you got.
Absolutely.
Long-term or short-term partnership?
Long-term for sure. Yeah, I think it's one. I think it proves a lot more authentic as a creator in terms of what you're bringing up to your audience. And, obviously, the checks are much bigger. So definitely prefer the long term.
All right. And then the last one, story or grid post?
Story. Honestly, that's been the most fun because I started on TikTok, and then in the last year, I got really much bigger on Instagram. And I love it for that reason too, because people actually look at your stories. And so like all the different like polls and the links and like the stuff you can share, it's really, really fun, man. Now I love my stories.
That's awesome. It's funny. I always have this existential debate about stories. And like we talked about it a little bit, but I don't know. We always ask one question, and I'm curious if there was any brand that if they just showed up in your inbox, you're like, that's it for me. Who would that brand be? Aspirational brand deal.
Aspirational brand deal. So this is okay. You said aspirational, so I'm going to give you aspirational. I would love to do a deal one day with like a Banana Republic, because I feel like for me getting started, my dad wore a blue Dickie suit, before they popped off in Brooklyn, right? Like the real ones, with a little bit of dirt on them, and so like I had to build my own wardrobe when it came to work, and like I just fell in love with that brand and the fit and like the styling. And obviously in the last couple of years they've made a huge investment in terms of their own brand, in terms of like the premiumization of it. And so I would love to do like a social collab with them, maybe get my face on a couple stories, in Soho. Like that'd be amazing. Like I would love to do something with them that's like a back to school or like intern or like kickstarting your professional wardrobe kind of thing. That would be amazing.
We'll have to shoot over your shorts post and see if we can get some kind of
yeah. Hey,
there's got to be a play on that. I'm thinking about that. You can get Kwame with his Hollister shorts on and flip flops, and you're like, yes. Don't be this guy. Yes. Be this guy.
Oh, I like it.
Oh man. So yeah, it's been a fantastic conversation, Colin. Is there anything that you want to leave our audience with? Would you say, I think generally what would you want to leave them with, but also do you have any other content creators that are, that you look up to, whose content you love to take example from, or anything like that?
That's a good question. Yeah, there are a lot of content creators I admire. I think, in the career in corporate space, I think there's so few of us. I feel that we all sort of stick together. And so especially here in New York, like I've had the chance to talk and meet with people like Tim Chiusano, Hannah Gets Hired, Kevin White, who's based out of Chicago and mostly on TikTok. I've had the chance to talk to him. There are a couple career-focused creators that I really enjoy, and I think they're doing really good work. Lillian Zhang, also on TikTok. And yeah, the one piece of advice I'll say, and this is career advice, but it's also good life advice, is that I think what nobody told me that I wish I had heard earlier in my career is that not all feedback is good feedback or should be weighed like equally. And I felt like if somebody would have told me that if someone gives you a piece of feedback, especially if it isn't related to your work product, which is your first red flag, but like if it makes you feel a certain way about who you are as a person and who your actual like personality and how you show up to your life is, you really need to judge like the messenger and like the validity of that feedback. Because I've seen in my own career multiple times, and a lot of people that I interact with through social media, they've been told something that is like the total antithesis of like who they are and how they would naturally show up. And so I feel like, I'm all for, real-time feedback and responding in the moment and all that stuff. I'm not anti-feedback, but just it's not all good and it's not all coming from the right place. And if you hear something that is so antithetical to who you are as a professional or as a person, you gotta judge that and maybe toss it by the wayside.
I love that. Well, we really appreciate you coming on. To find Colin, check out Career Colin on Instagram. It's been a great conversation. Really, really appreciate your time.
Of course. Yeah. Appreciate the opportunity and nice to meet the two of you.
Yeah,
for sure. See y'all next time. Bye-bye.